Hi, friends. Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm your host, Josh Horton. I'm so glad you're here. We're dropping new episodes every Monday. If you want early access, exclusive content, and discounts to workshops and events, become a Beta Creative Workers Union member. You can find the link in our show notes. As always, I could use your help. If this episode resonates, send it to a friend or a teammate. Social media only goes so far, but real conversations spread through real community. Sign up for our newsletter and stay connected with updates, new episodes, and everything happening at Creative Workers Union. Today's guest is my friend Brian McDonald, a screenwriter, director, and producer with 30 plus years in film, television, and comics. He's the author of Invisible Ink, which is required reading at Pixar, and his latest book, Land of the Dead, explores how stories shape the way we live. In this episode, we talk about the film industry, how it's lost its way, and what's worth saving. Brian shares his perspective on why the 70s and early 80s were a golden era of storytelling and why marketing overtook meaning and how AI might actually return the power to real storytellers. We talk about the art of survival through story, what's missing in modern film, and how conviction, not spectacle, is what makes creative work timeless. If you're feeling overwhelmed by change or unsure of your place in the future of this industry, this episode's for you. Let's jump in. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now, podcast-wise.
So we had a podcast, You Are a Storyteller, Jesse, Brian, and I. And there was a parallel podcast that was You Are a Storyteller, Masters of the Craft, where I interviewed other people who I thought were masters of their particular craft. I think there's a sort of Venn diagram crossover between different crafts. And so I had some really great people on, some of them writers, but not all of them were writers.
So you're doing a new podcast now.
Yeah, that's called Story First because it's related to this studio I'm starting. So the studio is Story First Studio. The podcast is Story First. And we'll be talking to all kinds of storytellers. The first guest that we recorded was a friend of mine who recently left Pixar, but he had been there since Toy Story. Really happy about it. I wanted to start it again, and it took a while to get going again.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things, let's kind of even the playing field, I guess. Brian is an incredible writer, director. What has been the biggest shift in movie making? Brian and I first are movie fans too, but, before we ever set out to do any of this work, we were big fans of a lot of different movies, and Brian's come up with some really solid suggestions, for me that have helped me understand kind of where Brian's mind was formed and shaped. But kind of what do you see happening right now in the industry?
First of all, a lot of it depends on the age group you fall under in terms of, so a lot of times, I seem to be older than everyone. That happens. And whenever I talk to somebody, when somebody's older than me, it's kind of a shock. So I'm older than most people I deal with. What that means is that my references are different. I grew up on a different set of movies. When people talk about the movie they grew up on, I'm like, I was 30 years old when that movie came out, or 40 years old when that movie came out. Right. And so it's like, oh, did you grow up on that? Because that just came out. Right. So when sometimes people will say, what have you liked recently? They'll say to me. And that's always interesting because recent depends on how old you are. Right.
Sure.
So I had a 20-year-old in a class of mine and I gave a list of movies to watch and he scoffed at me and he said, Brian, where am I going to find these movies? Some of these movies are older than I am. And I said, almost every movie is older than you. Like you're 20.
Right.
It's like your perspective is off. Right. All that to be said is that the movies I grew up on. So I grew up primarily in the 70s and into the 80s. And that was kind of a golden era.
Absolutely.
And I thought that's what movies were going to be. And then they weren't that. They turned into something else. But there's Jaws and E.T. and Ghostbusters is in there, Back to the Future's in there, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan is in there. There's a long list of like bona fide classics. Star Wars, right?
Were you too old for Goonies back in the day? What was your initial thoughts on Goonies? Did you go see it in the theater or did you wait? That's my number one, by the way, if anyone's ever interested.
That's your number one movie?
Yeah, and followed by The Shawshank Redemption, which is hilarious. It's like such a turn.
Yeah, that is a turn. Here was my thing about Goonies. My mentor, Bruce Walters. So I started working in film when I was 13. And I was hired by this guy, Bruce Walters, who did motion graphics. There was no name for motion graphics back then. So we would say animated titles or animated title sequences, or we did commercials and all kinds of stuff. And I worked for him. It was my first sort of after school job. And then I continued working for him. And then he ended up leaving and going to work for George Lucas to work at ILM. There he ran the animation department and the matte painting department. And so I would go visit him at ILM. And I was there when they were working on Cocoon, a movie called Enemy Mine. I was there. What else? They were working on Star Trek 3. So I got to see the actual Enterprise and touch it, which was really cool. So I got to sort of meet all these people doing this amazing. They were doing amazing work back then. Dennis. I didn't meet Dennis until later. Dennis Mirren. Dennis Mirren, who ran ILM. And anyway, so was sort of in charge of the effects part of it. I guess there was another president, but he was sort of the guy running the effects show. Really good guy too, by the way. Really nice, really smart guy. Anyway, so when Goonies came out, it was the first movie I think that Bruce had worked on that I got to see. So he was the first person I saw, I know that guy, his credits in a movie. And so I was very excited about Goonies. I was 19 years old. And I didn't like
What did he do in the movie? I'm very curious.
I don't remember what he did.
Because there's quite a bit of matte painting with the ship. I mean, there's a lot of things going around on that that made that happen.
I don't think he was doing matte painting stuff then. It was all probably animation stuff of some kind. I remember he worked on a movie called Young Sherlock, and I went into work with him once when he was working on a shot from Young Sherlock, and there's a special effect in Young Sherlock that nobody talks about.
The stained glass window?
No, not the stained glass window.
Is that in that movie or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm very familiar.
Okay. So a lot of people are familiar with the stained glass window because it's the first CGI character, right? The stained glass window comes to life in this night, whatever. There's a shot of the stained glass window guy coming at a priest or a monk in this place. Well, there's candelabras in this church in the thing, but when they shot it, there were no candles in the candelabras. And Bruce's job was to put candles in the candelabras in post. This is pre-computer generated stuff, all that stuff. And he worked out this really cool device. So when I see that shot, it's famous for the first CGI, character. But there's also this other effect that no one knows is there. That was actually.
Does Young Sherlock, does it hold up? I mean, is this worth telling people about to go figure out how to watch it?
See, here's the thing. It was never good. So
I just remember, I'm yelling into the mic. I get excited when I talk to you, but I just remember seeing it as a kid and just thinking oh man, this is was it a Spielberg thing? It just seemed like a thing that was on television that was like the things that I would see in the movies. And I was totally into it.
I can imagine as a kid, you would be totally into it. It's one of those things I wanted to like. For me, that era, that year, 1984, that Goonies came out, was something felt different to me. Things started to change. But here's what I've noticed about things that people have liked since they were a kid. They don't adjust their taste. So what they do is they say, they go, I love that thing. That's great. It's when'd you see it? I was 6.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And most people, and because there's an emotional attachment, they'll never see it. They can never see it. The Goonies, I can't watch it, right? But people who grew up on it are like, it's the best movie ever. It's like, I was 19.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I was going to assume, yeah, you're a bit older.
I was 19. But I was also rooting for it. I wasn't looking for it to be bad. It was the first movie a guy I knew worked on. So it wasn't like I was actually genuinely disappointed. Like it was like I was disappointed. I wanted to like it. Doesn't mean it's not fun for people, and it doesn't mean it's not nostalgic. It just
Sure.
It was different than what was coming before. It was different from E.T., for instance.
Yeah. What would be your take on what was different from that and E.T. if we're comparing the two films?
E.T. had more depth.
Sure.
Right. And it was still fun and kids still liked it and all those things, but it had more depth. There was a certain point at which it became about all sizzle and no steak. So, right. Everybody talks about Star Trek 2, which is so well written, it's crazy. People don't know how well written it is. They go, that's a good one because of Khan. It's like, there's so much good writing in that piece. It's kind of, it's a triple axle. Like, you can't do that, what you just did. Like, there's stuff that construction wise that people don't understand that makes that thing work. And that wasn't true in Star Trek 3. It was sort of after, once you get into 84, and I'm not the only person who says 84.
Interesting. Were there any other films that you would lump into this that just for context?
That came out in 84 after 84?
Yeah.
A lot of things. It's hard to say. And believe me, this is where people think I don't like anything after 1984. That's not true. But There was a consistency that went away. There was, if you look at the year 1982, for instance, the amount of movies that came out in 1982 that people still reference or that are still relevant is kind of amazing. So Star Trek 2 is in that group. E.T. came out. Gandhi came out. Tootsie came out.
I still haven't seen Tootsie, which is ridiculous.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, Tootsie's amazing. So Tootsie came out. Tron came out. Blade Runner came out. Poltergeist came out. The Verdict, for those people who might know that, came out. Amazing movie, The Verdict. I can't even list all of them.
Right.
But every weekend of 1982, you could see a movie that's now a classic.
Right.
That's not true anymore. So now something comes out that's good or halfway good, and it's like the second coming, and it's like the best thing anybody's ever seen. And that just wasn't true before. It was like, yeah, I saw a masterpiece last week, and now I'm seeing another one.
Do you think it had to do with, do you think it had anything to do with kind of this marketing push? Like, one of the things I remember distinctly as a kid, maybe it was Burger King, I'm not exactly sure, but I bought them later in life too. But it was the first time that I was telling my parents, you've got to go get these glasses, right? Like, so the collector's glasses and all the little things that came with the Goonies back in the day. Mm-hmm. It was just everywhere in marketing. And there was a hype reel that came out before that I think you could see. I don't know what that's called, but basically, like, they had filmed a lot of the movie making already, and they had released it, I think, before, to kind of give people a heads up, like, hey, this thing's coming. Mm-hmm. Richard Donner, I think he's the director. And, it just showed these kids that you'd seen in these movies having a bunch of fun, like, and hanging out and shooting this movie. And by the time it came out, it was just like, you got to go see this. And the poster, I think Struzan did the artwork initially.
I think he did. Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, it was for me, that was magical and nostalgic. I mean, I went to go see the 40th, I think, recently, or whatever the latest was. And every time I would start crying when some new thing that would unveil. I mean, I know that's my brand, but anyway.
No, I get it. I mean,
in this crazy way.
I know I get it. There is something magical about the things you saw when you were a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And nobody, I'm not trying to take that away from people. You know what I mean?
No,
I'm not,
I know. No, I
yeah,
don't think you are. I'm just
yeah.
trying to think of, what was it
Which,
commercially
what shifted?
that turned it into, what turned it into
Okay.
the sizzle, right? Or
Okay.
took
So
that.
into the 70s, the reason there are so many classics that were made in the 70s, and there are a ton of them. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, there's a generation of people now, generation and a half, I guess, of people who don't watch older things. And so they
Right.
don't know what they haven't seen, and they don't know what's, they don't know. Like, oh, you haven't seen the best stuff. When you haven't seen the best stuff, then you'll settle for something that's halfway decent because you haven't
Sure.
seen the best stuff, right?
Sure.
So it's really weird. It's like, no, these people were clearly better at their jobs than these people. And so, and it's hard to explain to people because time has a way of putting a dust over everything. So the thing about time is that you go, well, that looks old fashioned, the way it was shot, the way the acting style is, the way the hairstyles are, the way the color is not quite right to your eye because you're accustomed to something else.
And wasn't the acting, I don't know what they would call this, but the acting was almost overacting, right? Like, especially if you watch something like in the 40s or the 50s, it was a little bit more dramatic than, say, it would be these days, a dramatic actor, right?
Uh,
Or am I awful in that one? I'm not.
no, you're not off. I wouldn't call it that.
It's like they were, acting from a stage where people had to see it more, or feel it
Right.
more.
Yeah.
But it was not. It didn't translate to a movie or something that intimate, if you will.
It's a weird thing. The best actors always acted the same way.
Right.
So, like if you watch Spencer Tracy, his acting would be indistinguishable from an actor now, for the most part. Maybe a movie in the 30s or something that was a little bit different. I think that there are acting styles that come around, and I actually see a lot of acting now that seems just like acting looks to people when they see the 30s. I see a lot of that acting now.
Right.
The thing is, the language is contemporary, the costume is contemporary, the sets are contemporary, and they, so it's like, and they recognize the gestures because gestures change over time too. So people move differently. And so I think people think sometimes the acting is way better than it is. And I see a lot of actual overacting. A lot of that's not acting. A lot of that's directing. Directors kind of make that happen sometimes because they're bad directors. So bad directors train actors to show them stuff. So it's called result directing. So a bad director would say, I need you to be angrier here. That's a bad director. That's a result. They want a result. They have a picture in their head, and when they say anger, they might mean I want you to yell. But they don't say that. I want you to be angrier. So what happens is the actor tries to project anger out at the director so that they see me being angry, right?
Right.
Versus, and the thing about anger is anger can look like anything. Anger can look like being very quiet. It can be very articulate.
Right.
It can even laugh. Right? There's no way to be angry. Right?
Sure.
Right? So a better director says something like, instead of being angry, it's more like, this person you're dealing with is literally the stupidest person you've ever met in your life, and you can't believe that you have to deal with them. Now, you see what I'm saying? Now everything,
Totally.
it changes the performance, right? So it's coming from someplace else. Yeah,
That's brilliant too. That's just a brilliant prompt, if you will, right? Like, because for me, if I was angry and I was dealing with someone who is ridiculous, I would just shut up. There's no need to express there's no need for expression. You're wasting your time at that point. So
right,
that's a great prompt.
Yeah. So there's, so a lot of times people don't. So bad directors will give results, and then that makes an actor overact. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of overacting. But I don't know if I blame the actor. I can't know what happened there. I don't know if it's the actor. I know it's the director, but I know that when I get to work with actors, they often have these habits from bad directors. So But no, the acting styles were different. So like silent movie acting, which looks very corny to us,
Right.
is called Desart acting. And Desart was a style of acting that had been in place for a very long time, predating cinema and
Vaudeville, maybe.
no, it goes way back. It's like the artists used to use Desart when they posed models and stuff. So like,
okay.
so in Desart, I wish I knew more about it. I want to actually learn more about it. In Desart, every body part had a meaning. So for instance, the hands were the brain, were the mind. And that's where you get the cliche of the bad guy rubbing their hands together as they think of the plan.
Oh, right, for sure.
Right? Like, this is what I'm thinking, right? That kind of thing. So and the thing where somebody is shocked by something or in awe and they put their hand to their forehead, and that silent movie stuff, that was, you look at all the illustrations, that's Desart, a lot of Desart acting, right? And that worked for people because they didn't know anything else, right? And then later, the sort of the Russians brought over a more realistic acting, and and then we started doing that. And but good acting is always the same. And the interesting thing is there were actors who were from the old days, 30s, 40s, 50s, who made it old long enough to be in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
And their acting wasn't corny. Their acting was, it was the same job to them. It's like, oh, it's more like this. Then they would just do it like that. Like they could do, I think that they could do what we're doing now, but we can't do what they were doing. And I also think you have to be indoctrinated into a style. So here's what I mean. If you watch a lot of old movies, that stylized acting disappears. You don't see it anymore. It just is the reality of, it's like the difference between watching a situation comedy and the acting in a situation comedy and the acting in a drama, right? Like, right? Those are different acting styles, right? But if you're watching the sitcom, you don't go, what terrible acting. This is the acting that's appropriate.
That's just what they did. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And so when you watch an older movie, when you get used to it, the things that separate you from the story, again, the acting style, the photography, the fact that it's in black and white, whatever it is, that stuff starts to disappear. You just have to work your way through it enough. And then you start seeing amazing things that were invisible to you. And you're like, oh, okay, I see why that's genius, what I just saw.
Yeah, and I think that's my challenge too. Is I was lucky enough to be raised in the '80s, but I'm born in '79, and so a lot of what was coming out on TV was in the '70s, or the things that were at the Blockbuster before that. It was our rental place down the street was from the '70s, and so I had the benefit of kind of growing up on those things. But back to the kind of '84 Goonies, what in your mind? I mean, again, I was trying to take it into the marketing place.
No, that's exactly what it was.
Okay, yeah, I figured.
Okay, so
because I remember that very distinctly. Of every movie that came out after that had collector glasses and toys, and I mean, and obviously Star Wars had a big pull on that too. But
it was
a different game.
It was different with Star Wars. So yes, the hype from Star Wars and Jaws before that, that was audience generated hype. That wasn't studio generated hype.
Right.
Audiences loved those things. There used to be something called word of mouth.
Right.
And that was considered advertising. And so it's like, you have to get people to tell their friends to watch this movie. The strategy was to make something good enough that people would tell their friends. But that's iffy. What if you make a bad movie? So what you want to do is be able to put together a trailer that gets people into the movies and eliminates that word of mouth thing, right? Because once they have your money, they don't care if you enjoy the movie. They just have to fool you into watching the next one.
Very true.
Right?
I mean, that's, and how many of those movies have we gone to and completely been, duped?
Yeah. And then you go see the next one because they advertise it for a year and you're like, I got to see this movie. By the time
Right.
it comes out, and some stuff still has some audience generated, like Sinners is that way, right? I think that the audience is making that movie what it is. I don't think that could come from the studio the way. I think they had a hand in it, but I think that the audience is really what's fueling that thing.
Was that, do you think that was a budgetary constraint, that the marketing just wasn't out there? I mean, I guess maybe I don't see a lot of movie marketing. I used to go to like apple.com/trailers and just try to digest as much stuff as possible, but that's not even a thing anymore. That stuff's buried somewhere in the Apple TV.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where it is. Yeah. Well, so I have to start in the 70s. So in the 70s, here's what happened. What had happened before, in the 60s is that the studios started being sold off to corporations. So I think so like an oil company would own a movie studio. And what happened when that happened was that they didn't know how to make movies. Like they knew business, but they didn't know how to make movies. The people before them knew how to make movies, cared about movies. Movies were important to them. The people who came later were just like, I don't know, we make movies, I guess. Like they didn't know how to do it.
They didn't have the conviction.
They didn't. Yeah, they were just, for them, it was just, we make widgets, we make cogs, whatever. It's just a product, right? But they didn't know how to appeal to an audience. What happened, because they didn't know that, a couple things happened. One is that film school people started to break into film. They hadn't before. Film schools didn't exist before. Coppola was the first film school person to get in to mainstream movies. I have a whole thing about film school. I think film school is kind of ridiculous, but I do. I think it's just a way to make money, and people who go to film school are going to argue with that and tell me I'm wrong. But I do think that if you look at who didn't go to film school, it's an impressive list.
Sure.
That includes David Lean and Alfred Hitchcock and Billy Wilder. You know what I mean? And John.
Yeah, same thing in art and design, of course.
Right.
I mean,
right. Like the best people, Charlie Chaplin, Keaton, right? There was no film school to go to, right? Right. So, right. And I found myself, I didn't go to film schools. I find myself teaching my film school friends things all the time. Like, you didn't learn this? You didn't see this movie? Well, no, because it's not an obscure Russian movie that no one sees except there are people in film school, right? Right. They don't, so I was like, okay. So, but anyway, they started giving these young people carte blanche. Do your thing. We don't know what you do. I guess do your thing. And so they were free to create these masterpieces. There's a book called Easy Riders and Raging Bulls that's kind of all about this time period. And they kind of went crazy, the filmmakers, and did all kinds of like, well, let's go shoot this movie. And then they'd go there and they would do cocaine for 3 months, and then like there'd be no movie and stuff. So
are you talking about the crew, like Spielberg, Coppola?
Yeah, Spielberg was not a drug guy, but
right. But Lucas.
Yeah, that group.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah.
Those guys.
Amazing.
They were the young kids coming in and changing things. And as a matter of fact, talking about the marketing of Star Wars, Lucas, first of all, the idea that science fiction films made money was crazy to people. Science fiction films don't make money. That's, that was the prevailing wisdom. But Lucas was able to get merchandising when he signed that deal. That's how little they thought about merchandising.
Right.
So when you talk about the toys,
and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. He got the sequel rights, right? Because it was a pre-franchise world, right?
Right.
Which is also something that younger people have no concept of.
Right.
As a teacher, I have more students who want to come up with franchises than want to write a good story.
Ugh.
Right. But the studios are supporting that. Yes, come up with a franchise. Come up,
right? Because that's you can project how you're going to make money there, or attempt to.
Right. Attempt to make money. We'll have a franchise. It's like, why don't you make one good movie? Because I spent a long time since I've seen one of those. Like, just do that. Like, that's
Right.
hard enough. A lot of, yeah, I don't know. Just make one good movie. That's all I'm asking. Some stuff, it makes sense that it's franchised. I mean, it was designed that way, right?
Yeah,
James
there's a
Bond.
book series or whatever.
Yeah, it's designed that way. Okay, I get that, right? Lord of the Rings is funny because Lord of the Rings was written as one book. And the publisher's like, you can't publish this. Let's break it into 3 books, right? So it's not really a trilogy, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the initial book called in its entirety? Was that
well, it didn't come out that way. The publisher just said we can't publish this book. He turned in those 3 books as a book.
Incredible.
Yeah. And the publisher's like, no one will buy this book.
Sure.
so they made it into 3 books, right? So it's masquerading as a franchise, right? Right. But it's just one big story. Anyway, so in the 80s, the studios were like, okay, these people are like blowing our money and whatever. Let's not give them any power anymore. And let's let the marketing people decide what gets made. And once the marketing people started to decide what got made was, I think, a lesser quality thing for the most, not entirely, but for the most part, because it was all about what's easy for us to sell.
Right.
And instead of going, we have this movie, let's sell the movie we have, it's how do we make our movie just easy to sell to the public. And easy
to consume, dumb it down. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that gets baked into that.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually believe that everything became about the trailer.
Sure. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think everything became about the trailer because that's what gets you, gets butts in seats, right? So if you have a trailer, that's, I think, the reason for all the effects and all the stunts and all the stuff. And I like that stuff as much as the next guy. I just don't like it in place of a story, right? But I like it to support a story. I'm down. I'm down with the cause. If it's big and loud and fun, I'm there. But please tell me a story, please. But you can make a really good trailer full of those things, and the funny line that this character has, and this and that, because you see all that stuff. When I was a kid, trailers didn't show you everything.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the difference in trailers. I mean, trailers have been around. I don't know when they started, but a long time. But a lot of it, I've seen a lot of trailers from the -- where it's like graphic cards get slid into place, and then it's like there's like a little movie, and then it's like, a little clip, and then there's a graphic, and it's just very rudimentary. It's like starring this person.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, and in the 70s there were some really good trailers, and into the 80s there were some good trailers, but they didn't used to tell you everything. They used to tease you.
That's right. Yes.
Right. Trailers in the old days used to come at the end of the movie. That's why they're called trailers, right? So
I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that, but they used to come at the end of the movie, and then because before television, people went to the movies 3 times a week. It was essentially television. So what you were saying was, hey, come on back next week. Right. That's kind of what you were saying. I
remember there's a lot of photography in Memphis. You may have seen some of it, but there's a famous photographer who did medium format film. I forget what his name is, but he would shoot basically down Main Street. He would shoot these very symmetrical shots with the street and the vanishing point just straight down the middle. Mm-hmm. But the number of theaters that were in Memphis is insane. It was just like a theater, 5 buildings, theater, 5 buildings, theater. And then, air conditioning got brought into the mix. And so people were escaping the heat in these theaters. There's a lot movies and I guess the culture around movies is very fascinating to me.
Yeah. Air conditioning is the reason for summer blockbusters.
Right. I've heard this. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't really exist. But then air can be like, come in here, you'll get cool,
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. And speaking of getting cool, in the old days when the projectors used to get hot, they had vaudeville acts between showings, and
Ah,
they called them coolers because the projector had to cool. So they, so they were,
interesting.
yeah. So you would get, you would get your short subject, so a short film. You would get a newsreel. You would get your feature film, and then you would have coolers, and then you would get your second feature film. Like you'd be there, you could be there all day.
Interesting.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
did it in the way they used to do? I mean, maybe I'm thinking about this or I dreamed of this, but the way they used to do air conditioning in theaters is under the stage, they would basically bring in ice and then
Mm-hmm.
blow it
Yeah,
out.
blow it out. Yeah,
God,
I've heard
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
just super rudimentary there. But in a place like Memphis, and they were back in the day, they used to wear suits,
Oh, like
like
yes,
wool
yeah,
suits in the
yeah,
middle
right.
of summer, which is the most ridiculous thing ever.
It is, it is. But anyway, going back to marketing started running the movie business, and then that changed the movie business.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I think we
They
see a
put
lot of that
business first.
now.
They put
I'm
business
sorry. Go ahead.
put business first.
Right.
There's the business of movies and not the movie business.
Yeah, one of the things that you talked about that I think is important too, and I think it's just it's our culture. It's about money making,
Hmm.
capitalism, whatever you want to do. But have you ever noticed in your hometown when a restaurant that was really fantastic, right,
Hmm.
gets bought by someone else who just
Oh,
wants to make money, and
right.
then that
Then
restaurant just
it
goes
tanks.
downhill?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I can think of every cool thing that's happened in Memphis in the last 10 years.
Hmm.
And like it starts out really, really cool. And then someone sells it to make a profit. And then the people who take it over, who thought they understood it and I thought they got it, that really didn't have real conviction around that,
Right.
experience, if you will. And it
Right.
just
No.
tanks. It's out of business now.
Yeah.
All of it.
That happens all the time. Um, I saw a version
There's a
of
lesson
that.
there. There's a lesson there that
Yeah.
people need to really like build something you feel convicted about and stick with it, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody smart would figure out what is it that what's they got to know the secret sauce. Sometimes people don't know
Right.
the secret sauce, right? Like there's a what is it? Find that. If you can find that and honor that, I think you can go ahead. You can take over a business, but you have to
Yeah.
honor that thing, whatever that thing was, because that's the secret. Lots of places have food, right? So
Sure.
why is this restaurant working? Right, right. You have to figure out what that is, and a lot of people don't bother doing that. They end up killing the golden goose, right?
That's right. Right.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, oh, it reminded me of something, but I forgot what it was. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh,
So I wanted to fast forward a little bit.
okay.
I wanted to talk about AI, right? So
Mhm.
the last time we spoke by phone, we were kind of catching up and seeing what was going on in each other's worlds and, sharing experiences and kind of leading into what we're going to talk about with what you're doing right now is this, AI coming on the scene, right? And we've all seen these trailers, right? Where they're really trailers, but it's like these trailers that are created for a movie that doesn't exist, that wasn't written,
Hmm.
and it was all due to prompts, right?
Right.
And so I think for most people thinking about leveraging AI for movies, they're thinking about those kind of things, right? Like how do we create this cinematic masterpiece based
Hmm.
off of a prompt?
Hmm.
And when you were telling me kind of what you were getting into and your focus now, I was like, oh man, is he getting into this? And then your viewpoint, in a lot of ways, was very, very different. And I
Hmm.
think, and what you're getting into now is very, very different. So let's get into it. What are you doing now? And why are you able to do what you're doing now? Right.
Right.
And how do you see AI, not only helping what you're doing, but helping so many more be able to do what you want to do?
Okay. So
This is a good conversation to get into.
yeah, yeah. So well, there are a couple things here. So um, I've been lucky enough to be in the room when people are, at studios when people are coming up with stories, and this is my job, to help people figure out their story, right? So, I've done it with some people at Pixar, and I've done it at Disney and other places, some video game companies and stuff. And so I'm aware of how the sausage is made. Like, I know how they do that, right? And I'm brought in specifically because, that guy knows how to put a story together. That's why I'm brought in. So, but what I see in a lot of movies, a lot of people give lip service to story. A lot of people. We're all about story here. It's all about the story. The story is the most important thing. And then you go there, and I'm talking about any studio in particular, and they don't know what a story is, and they don't care. They just like to say it.
Right.
And they think if they put enough cool scenes in or enough funny lines or something, that they'll have a story. They haven't studied it for some reason. This is the way I feel about stories. There's a familiarity we have with stories that makes us think we have an expertise. Here's what I mean. Everybody knows what a house is. Everybody's quite familiar with a house, right? I know how a door works. I know how stairs work, right? I know how the kitchen works. I understand how a house works. Oh, these are windows. I'm not baffled by, it opens like this. These are blinds. You know all that stuff. Okay. I can't build a house just because I have familiarity with a house. You can't write a story just because you have familiarity with stories. You have to know as much about building a story as a person does about building a house, right? So it's the same. It's a construction job, and you
have to be a craftsman or woman. Like that's what it is.
That's the
job.
That's the gig. And so a lot of people think, but I've got a really cool idea. And it's like, that's not, I was just talking about, I was going to do something with a comic book artist. We were going to do a project together, and we were very excited. And I sent him the script for the project, and he said, "Hey, I thought we were going to do this together." I go, "We are doing it together." I'm like, "I'm a writer. This is the part I do." Right.
Right.
And what he wanted more story input. And in my mind, it's like, I don't draw. So in my mind, it's as if I said to him, "I've got some ideas for some drawings, so why don't I do some of those?"
Right.
He would think it was ridiculous.
Right.
Right. Like, well, no, it'll be bad. That's all I'm saying. I'm not judging you as a person. I'm saying you don't know my job, right? And I don't know yours either, right? And it was up for discussion. Anyway, we ended up not working together because he was like, "You're not giving me enough power." And like,
right.
No, I thought we were doing this together, and this is the thing I do. I don't know what else to tell you. Anyway.
Well, I think too, like at a certain level, I mean, this is so transferable to design and art, but at a certain level, you don't have the patience to work through something with someone else, or the time or the money. I don't know exactly what it is, but at a certain point, like someone from a startup the other day contacted me and wanted me to work on their brand. And then the last line in one of their paragraphs deep into the brief was like, "We're not paying for this. We hope that you'll work on this for spec." And I was like, wait a minute.
It wasn't
like,
this, was it?
No, sorry. No, it was a very, very, very young, optimistic person, I guess, that just didn't really understand how it works. But yeah, you reach a certain level of expertise, and then you just kind of don't want to, it's what you do. And it's like asking, someone who paints a masterpiece, "Oh, can I cut in here and just paint these people or these hands?" Right.
Right.
Good grief. Quick pause. If this conversation is giving you something to think about, take a second and send it to someone who'd appreciate it. Social algorithms are fickle, but word of mouth, that still works. You can also join our newsletter through the link in the show notes. That's where we share new episodes, updates, and everything happening at Creative Workers Union.
So I was sitting around, and I had been working on a project. Speaking of franchises, I had been writing for a Star Wars project that ended up not going. So the director and I were really good friends, and he brought me into the project, and we were writing this Star Wars movie, and it ended up getting canceled. And which was, neither one of us were happy about that, because that's a nice, you know what I mean? That's a nice thing on your resume, right? Right.
Yeah, who doesn't want to work on Star Wars?
Yeah. So, you know,
Even these days.
even these days. And so anyway, that didn't work out. And but we thought we had a good story, and we thought it would have been a cool movie. And both of us had, he's been working a long time, I've been working a long time, and we've always stopped short of doing what I think we're capable of doing. So that's one component here. The other component was I was looking at AI and AI image generation, and a lot of people have their pushback about it. They have their problems with it. They think it's going to replace them. All these things. It's stealing from me. All these things, and that's another discussion, and we can have that discussion.
Right.
Right.
We've
But
had that discussion.
you and I've had that discussion. We can table that for now, though. Let's
Right.
table that for now. We can come back to it if we want to. So, what I thought was, well, wait a second. All of these studios have been trafficking in spectacle. We have a lot of car chases. We have lots of special effects, crazy stunts, and blah, 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 and special effects, all that stuff. Well, what happens now if everybody can do that on their phone? What happens now, right? You don't have anything anymore. Spectacle has become cheap, both creatively inexpensive, I like to say, and actually inexpensive, right?
Right.
So what do you have if everybody has spectacle now? Everybody can type a prompt in and get something that looks cool, right? So what do you have? You don't have anything. And if you haven't been leaning on story, that would be the differentiator, right? If
That's
you
right.
had a really great story, then great. Well, I was trying to figure out, well, how do I get into these studios and explain to them that they need to like have a story and put story first? And I was like, why am I doing that for them? These are the
Right.
places that have locked me out and not given me an opportunity. Why do I want to make them money? I'll make the money, right? So I thought I'll start a studio. And I taught.
As one does, just thinking one day.
Well, here's the thing. I couldn't have said it 10 years ago.
Right.
Right. But now I can do it on this. So now I don't need anybody's permission. And I know I'm a bona fide story expert. That's my thing. I have an advantage here.
Yep.
So, right. So, and given the media landscape that anybody can start a podcast, anybody can do a thing on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, and those people become bona fide celebrities, bona fide, right? So it's like everything says, yeah, you can do this, right? You can do this, and you have something you can bring to the table. So, so we started a studio that is AI. AI is a big component of the studio because it allows us to have, if we wanted to make our own Star Wars in quotes, we can do that, right?
Right. Independent
Independent film before, because of the way it was financed, meant a kind of a genre of film. It meant,
right.
It was usually it's like a couple of people in a coffee shop or driving a car, or you know what I mean?
Totally.
Whatever, you know what I mean?
It.
And you don't have to do that now. Like if your independent film is Dune, you can do that, right? Nobody can stop you from doing that, right?
Yep.
If your independent film is Lord of the Rings, if that equivalent, right? You can do that. So that's pretty cool because it opens up a whole thing, right? I know it's going to get flooded. The market will get flooded, but they won't, again, they'll have familiarity, but they won't have expertise, right?
That's right. That's a good thing to say for sure. It also levels the playing field, right? So it takes the it's what you're doing in some ways is kind of blowing things up. So it takes the politics out of the mix, right?
Right.
You let the good stuff rise to the top, and it will. I believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because humans just, there are those that are just into consumption, but then there are other folks that are wanting something deeper, wanting something more, wanting more connection, wanting to feel something. And this is what you're talking about. The ability to do that without asking for permission, which is we could talk about that for days.
Yeah, but exactly. So it's like, no, we don't need to, so, and the other thing is, we want to utilize human beings. So, we want to use as many humans as we can in the process. We don't have the money to spend on, production costs a lot of money, right? Well, it doesn't cost a lot of money when it's on your phone or your computer, right? So your production costs are almost nothing. Here's what that means. Your pre-production is where your money can go, and that's where all the artistic elements can go. So you can design the look of the piece. You can do the boards in the old-fashioned way. You can do all that stuff. There are jobs for artists. And as all these people are getting let go from Pixar and all these places, and everybody's starting to rely on AI, there's going to be tons of talent out there. Right? There's going to be tons of talent. So it's like, why don't we go get them? They're out of work, right? We can start this new thing. They can be part of developing a new thing. Here's the other thing. This is why it's a good time to get in. Now, a lot of people are going to try to get in, but that's all right. So it's a good time to get in because a lot of people are against it. And what that means is you have a head start because AI won't go anywhere. People can be mad at it, shake their fist at the sky and curse the gods. They can do all that and nothing will happen. I'm sure there's a guy who used to make stagecoaches who was really mad, right? When the automobile showed up.
Right.
It didn't go anyplace, right? But I make wagon wheels. We don't need wagon wheels, right? And you can make a case. It was better when we had horses instead of cars. Maybe it was. Doesn't change it.
Probably wasn't, but yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah, it probably wasn't. It wasn't very sanitary. So that's one thing. It had its own pollution. Let's just say that, right? But so yeah, maybe you lose something. I get that, and I don't like that either. But I remember I've seen a lot of these transitions. When I started, everything was film, and digital was like kind of a joke.
Totally.
It was a joke.
Yep.
And I remember a video editor telling me, I don't know, in 1983 or something, saying to me, video is going to take over. Video didn't look like anything that was going to take over film. I just thought it was ridiculous, right? But it did take over. And I saw the transition from 2D animation to 3D animation, right? So it's like, and I saw the editing go from editing physically to editing non-linearly. And all those things had their opponents. Every single one of those things had their opponents.
Yep.
Right? But this is going to do this and it's going to do that. And how can you have an animated film where it's like not drawn by hand? You're going to be missing a thing. And I love hand-drawn animation. Doesn't matter. Went away. Right. At least in this country, for the most part.
Sure.
Right. Although I hear rumors that Disney's bringing it back, which is interesting.
We've been hearing that. We've been hearing those rumors for a while. So
yeah. So we'll see if they do that. But anyway, but yeah. So things just move on and they change. And I've never seen technology go that saves people time and money. I've never seen that go back in the bottle. Nobody's going to go, yeah, let's not do that. That's never going to happen. As for how AI is trained, people forget I have a dog in this fight too because it writes. I'm a writer. It writes. So I'm not just a guy saying, "Hey, artists, suck it up," right? But here's the deal. And James Cameron just says something very similar to this as well. And he said this. And I've seen this. You can be influenced by lots of things. Like I would say to artists all the time, like illustrators, I'm like, I don't know an illustrator who is not influenced by other illustrators. I don't know a single one who's not influenced by other illustrators or other artists, right? So like, for instance, Mike Mignola learned how to compose and learned how to place blacks in his black and white stuff from copying Frazetta's work. He copied Frazetta's, and if you look at Mike Mignola's work and Frank Frazetta's work, you can see the influence. They don't look the same, but you can see the influence. Like Frazetta had this way of kind of not drawing feet and they kind of fade out at the bottom. And that's the same thing that Mike Mignola does, right? So it's like, yeah, I can see this. But Mike doesn't send a check to the Frank Frazetta estate, right? So we're all doing this all the time. So
well, and we were, sorry to stop you, but like we were all agreeing on this anyway before AI even got here, right? We were all agreeing that there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, that I don't know when that popped up, but we were all in agreement before AI that was, I mean, that saying has to be hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, but here's the thing. And people feel like, oh, they ripped me off. They're training and thing, and I'm not getting paid for it and all those things. All those things are true. The point that I think James Cameron probably said better than me, but the same point, which is this: it doesn't really matter what it's trained on. It matters what it spits out. If what it spits out looks exactly like you would do, you have a case. But it's trained on so many things. Right? That whatever your influence is, it's lost in millions of pieces of art. It's just lost in there. So unless somebody's trying to replicate you specifically, they haven't really done anything. You still get
one of the things, yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I learned recently too is that if you, like, say for instance, you come up with a hero piece, right, and you need to create, 3 or 4 more illustrations based on that piece of your own work, you can literally put your own work in there, and it puts a sandbox around this conversation, right? So your work doesn't feed into the AI. Basically, it just keeps it within that conversation, which is pretty remarkable when, say, you've got to make a case for, and again, you've got to rethink the way that you look at this. Like, say, for instance, you're an illustrator and you can come up with a hero piece, but you want to prove to the client that you have like 4 more things that should be done.
Right.
Well, you can do that very quickly without spending the time, and that time is money, proving this point. And then you can go back and finish those things out, right?
Right.
There are ways, and again, I don't want to cut this part. I mean, I know you're still going, but you've touched on a lot of things. Like, if we just sit here, right? Like, we have no control over this machine that they're building, right? We have no control. It's going to be built whether we like it or not.
Right.
So instead of corporations who are spending the money to try to leverage these things, right, that will, ultimately create these, consumer focused products that aren't deep, that don't have that human connection that we're all craving ultimately. If we don't learn how to leverage it, then we're just sitting by and letting other people do this work and take advantage of it. So I feel like when you told me this a couple of weeks ago, the lights went off and I was just like, oh man, or lights went on. And I was just thinking about, like, why don't we just adopt this type of thinking with AI? This is ridiculous that we're going to sit there and just cross our arms and not use it and not leverage it. I mean, it seems ridiculous at this point that people would not do that. So anyway, keep going. Well, this is good stuff.
It's become political and almost moral.
Oh, for sure. And the people, I mean, Elon Musk, of all people, has built his supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee, which gas turbines are polluting historically black neighborhoods and like these impoverished areas in Memphis. And our own Chamber of Commerce is trying to spin this because they think it's really great that they've built this supercomputer here.
Right.
They're trying to build another one, next one, like right down the street too. And so it is, I mean, it is an embattled conversation and it carries a lot of baggage, but we've got to learn how to leverage this.
Here's the other thing about AI getting into that stuff. We've done a bad job of taking care of the planet, and I know that this is another contributor to that. I also know that AI will get smarter than us pretty quickly. Pretty quickly, it's going to be smarter than all of us. And one of the things I know it's going to be able to do, and it's already doing some stuff like that, is solve a lot of problems that we're not smart enough to solve. Of course. Right? Yeah. And so when it's smarter than us and it says, oh, you need to make these corrections for climate change, or you can make a better battery if you do X, Y, and Z, right? So I actually think that it, more than most things, also has the potential to save us in a way that, like, people look at the downside of it, and I get it. This is the way I think of it. Sometimes we steal fire from the gods. Here's what I mean. Like, fire, and this is still true of fire. Fire is a tool, and it's unbelievably useful. It's also still dangerous. Fires are still dangerous. How long have we been working with fire? It's still dangerous. It's still hard to control, right? It can still consume us. It can still destroy us. The same thing with splitting the atom, right? That's stealing fire from the gods, right? Every now and then we do that. Every now and then we steal fire from the gods, and we have to deal with it. And I had a class once, and I was talking about every story having to have a point. And I was trying to explain that. And one of the students said, "What's a point?" And I was like, well, I didn't quite understand the question. I was like, well, I
had to think through that one.
I was like, I think it's clear what a point is, right? And I gave an answer, whatever my answer was about having a point. It was probably what you think it was. But I did take the question seriously, even though it threw me. I don't get a lot of new questions. I've been teaching like 30 years. I don't get a lot of new questions. That went through me. So, but I decided to look up the word point. And there was something I had noticed before, but this made it very clear to me. One of the definitions of a point is the tapered, sharp end of a tool or weapon. And I realized that you cannot make a tool without making a weapon. They always go together. Always. Yep. Right? A hammer, a knife, right? Always. Words. You cannot make a tool without making a weapon. And so you can decide to look at all of the bad things that this thing can do. You can also look at the good things that it could possibly do. And if you have a problem, you can use AI to try to fix that problem.
Sure.
Right? Because it's an unbelievably powerful tool. It can and will be weaponized. That is the nature of tools.
Right.
But what are you going to do with it? Right. And it's the same thing I used to say to people in the old days about writing screenplays when you had to print them out and things weren't as digital, you know. And I would say, and I believe this in my bones, if you write a screenplay, you will kill a tree. So you have to put something out that is as valuable as that tree.
Man, that's great. That's profound, for sure.
But that's the truth. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. That's why I'm offended by bad work. Like, you killed a tree for this, right? You know, so you have a responsibility to the planet.
You've talked about, you've talked about responsibility in a lot of different ways. I mean, we talk about, I think one of the things when you were working with belief and just the responsibility we all have to tell the truth, right? I mean, it's just it's what we do, honestly, just in communication. We have a responsibility to tell the truth. And I think, you know, in a weird way, I mean, corporations have pushed corporations to make money, have tried to lump as many people together, right? And tell us we're all alike because you need this thing,
right? Because
they want to sell to the maximum amount of people possible. And I think one of the things that we're going to find as, I hope we will find as we continue down this path that we're just on, we're on it. We can't get off of it, regardless of who you are, unless you can live in the woods by yourself and on your own, which is not good for you anyway.
Right.
Isolation, we've all found, is not good for you anyway. And so we've got to find ways. And I hope what happens is that people demand, more individualized experiences, smaller offerings, more human connections, deeper connections. I hope that one of the byproducts, I'm not saying it just yet, I'm thinking through this, but it's like one of the byproducts from this, I hope, is a deeper connection with, in your mind, story. We all love really incredible art. We love incredible story. We love deep connection with these things. And I think it's going to force that to happen because of, again, maybe you can help me articulate this, but I don't see a world where this is not going to enable people to, again, have the upper hand, where you're going to have the same power that a studio does in your pocket.
Right. Exactly. So what are you going to do with it? You have the power.
That's right.
I think one of the things that's happening is that people are giving away their power. So what they're saying is, hey, this is going to take my job, and it is. But you can make a new job. Right? You can make your job. So stop thinking about the job that they are going to not hire you for.
Right.
Stop that. Right. Losing a couple of gigs and the Star Wars thing was like a wake up call for me. Like, oh, okay. You know what? I don't need you people. Right. Right.
Right.
Right. And
why would you keep giving it to them?
Right. Exactly. I don't need you people.
That
when I was first getting started and I would get published, I'd get something published, and my writer brain would say, oh my God, I can't believe they're publishing me. This is so great. And I thought they were doing me a favor. Then I realized, no, they're not. They think they can make money off the thing, which is why they're doing it. They're not in the business of doing me a favor.
Right.
Artists often think that about opportunities that they get. Right. That nobody's doing you a favor. Actually, it's the best compliment in the world. We think we can make money off of you. Right. So if somebody else believes that of you, you could believe it of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Oh, I can.
Yeah. And these tools just make you, it makes you a powerhouse of publication, if you will. In so many different ways. One of the things I was thinking about, it kind of goes along with this thread that my mind's in, I can't escape it, is what do you think the impacts of this will be holistically? I don't know if you've spent much time thinking about this, but one of the things I think with AI is, say, since around 2000, when my first degree is in recording engineering with Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. And when I started in that program, there were 50 people in my class. And, you could really see these folks that were in this program really wanted to be recording engineers and producers and really had conviction about what they were doing. Right. 10 years later, 2010, I had so many people asking me, hey, should I send my kid to Full Sail? Should I do this? And then you'd go back and visit, and those classes were 200, 300, 400. I'm not exactly sure how many people were there, but it almost becomes cattle, right? It's just the experience gets so big because you can make money off of education, right? And it's not really about conviction and these folks. And so one of the things that I think is going to happen with AI is we may lose some creative jobs.
Yes.
But I think what's going to happen in the midst of this is we're going to have people that have a real deep conviction. This, like you and I, we cannot help but do what we're doing right now.
Right.
We can't help it. If tomorrow was taken away from us and we couldn't do it any longer, sure, maybe we'd have to go to Starbucks for a minute to get a job and, whatever, but pay our bills. But at the end of the day, we're going to continue to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that AI is going to do is going to basically help, because it's going to be prevalent and everyone can do it. I think less people are going to be able to make money at it, but it's going to help the people who really feel strongly convicted about the craft to rise to the top.
I think that's true.
Does that make sense? It's a weird thing because I'm saying that there's going to be something taken away. But I think in the midst of this, the beauty of it is the art that you're going to see is going to be coming from really incredible people that feel deeply convicted about this work.
Yes. Here's the thing. This is true of a lot of things. So I'm not picking on artists. It's also true of writers, and I'm sure lots of other people. Right now, you could be mediocre and you can work.
True.
But now somebody can get mediocre with a prompt. So they don't need you. So the way to fight that is to be better than mediocre.
That's right.
And that's not impossible. One time somebody was asking me about something about how to do. I said, well, you have to be better than everybody else. And they kind of laughed like, well, yeah, of course. I'm like, oh, you think that's impossible? That's part of your problem. You think it's impossible. The other thing is, I will give people, like I said earlier, I give people a list of movies to watch, a list of books that they can read. And it's like, oh, that's a lot of work. Oh, well, you know who's going to benefit? The person who does do those things.
That's right.
Most people won't do them. That's why it's easy to be better than them. It's just hours. Right.
I know. And it's hard. I feel like, I mean, this kind of gets into, raising children, but it's for whatever dumb reason, we've created a sense of entitlement, I think, because we're not as hard on our kids, or we're not, they just don't have the same. I mean, my own kids in particular, they just don't have the same. They're not driven to do much because they live very comfortable lives. And I make sure that they feel that comfort, that love, that security that they all need. But I'm continually fascinated. We're older, but there is still a young crop of folks that are coming out of high school that are, driven to become better illustrators, better writers, who really understand how to wield that weapon, if you will. Right. Mm-hmm. And sure, there's going to be some mediocrity that can be driven, can be pushed into that way too. But, a long time ago, a creative career wasn't something that everyone who thought they could just have a cool job just did.
Right.
It meant so much more.
Right.
It was a commitment to craft that was so rare, I'm assuming, that very few people got to do that job. And I think that's where it'll return. And I think it's probably just its place in society. You don't want people who are mediocre putting out the art that you view and you consume, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to go to a restaurant, where this is, 2-3 chefs later who've lost the secret sauce, if you will. Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, you can do that if you just need sustenance, but the experience that we all crave is something that's excellent and exceptional.
Right.
So anyway, there's a way, and again, I'm still kind of forming these views, but like, there's a way to look at this that's not so abysmal or so dark.
Right. Right.
And honestly, it's our job as creative leaders to just steward this movement back to craft, if you will. Mm-hmm. And tell them, what's the name of your studio?
Story First Studio.
Right. So that's it there. Yeah. You can't have a great movie without a great story. It's just not there. Right. And if you don't start with the first thing, and you try to back into it or backfill into it, it's just not, it's going to be what they're doing today. Right. In a lot of regards. And so, yeah, I just think it's going to create the right type of person creating the art that we want to consume. And I'm excited for that. Does it mean that some, young people that are going to school, and sadly, I mean, it's just a statement of our education system, they're going to be riddled with debt, and not get a job? Yes, that's going to be true.
Yeah, that is going to be true.
And so it'll be our responsibility to send we're dealing with this now, but just like, how do we send our kids to college in a responsible way?
Right.
I don't know. It's really tough.
It is tough. But there's the other thing. I thought about television in some regard to this, but I've also thought about photography. Artists were scared of photography. Right? Well, nobody needs me to paint a picture of the king anymore because you can just take a picture of the king. Right, right. And so I'm out of work. Scared everybody. But what did artists do? They started doing things photography didn't do. Right? So you don't get cubism pre-photography.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You don't get impressionism.
I never even totally.
Right? Right. You don't get what we think of as we don't get Rothko. There's a bunch of people we don't get if we have, right? So it becomes something else. Art does another thing. But photography also became art. Right? And there's somebody who's young enough right now where AI is not new to them. It just is the way the world is. And they will be an artist. They won't have any of the politics, any of the baggage, any of the, hey, this is not the way things are supposed to be because I grew up in a whole different world. They are just going to use it.
Yep.
And people think that having this at your fingertips is going to make you an artist. It won't. The same way having a calculator doesn't make us all mathematicians.
That's right.
Right? We still need mathematicians and we're still going to need artists. It just may look a little different than it looks now. You figure out where you fit. That's what people aren't doing. They're just pushing back and breaking all the cameras and saying, we don't want photography. Right. Like, no, photography's here. It doesn't matter if you break the cameras. Photography's here.
I always marvel at my two sons, my three sons, really, like the way that they navigate video games and that interface and just play those things exponentially faster than I could ever dream of doing it.
Yes.
And it's because they grew up on it.
Right.
I was introduced to, of course, Atari and then NES and then Super NES and then some. But the way young people without the baggage can attack these problems, they're going to be quicker. They're going to be faster. They're going to do all these things. And I think I was saying this, the last podcast that I was doing is just like, I feel like it's really important, and I don't know what you think about this, but it's really important to have a set of principles that guide us during this time, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what those are specifically for you, but for me, it's about craft. If your focus is on the craft and being driven to get better and learning, right? I don't think there's going to be. I think there'll always be a spot for you. Mm-hmm. It's when your focus becomes money or fame or whatever it ends up being. And there are a lot of people that are kind of focused on passive income through social media or whatever it ends up being. Right. Like, I'm not doing this podcast because I think I'm going to get an incredible amount of advertising dollars from it. I'm doing this podcast because these stories, especially in times like these, when people, 200 less people show up at your conference than last year, these stories still need to be told, and they need to be told in a very accessible way. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm doing this, so, do you have a set of guiding principles, that you're kind of developing or have developed that kind of guide what you're doing right now?
Well, yeah, and we've written it up and we have sort of a compass for the studio, but what it comes down to is that, I really honestly believe, like, through studying stories literally my entire life, before I even knew I was studying them, I've come to a conclusion about stories. And when people hear it, I don't think they really hear it. So because some people shrug it off and go, of course. I'm like, no, people don't know this. If they knew this, they'd be doing better work. So here's the thing. I used to think it was frivolous to be a storyteller. I used to think I'm interested in it. I'm way interested in it, but it doesn't contribute anything to the world. That's what I used to think. But through studying stories and how people tell stories and the natural world, just people talking and everything, and other stories, I realized that stories are about passing on survival information. They are about passing on survival strategies. That's the only reason they exist. People will, without thinking about it too hard, have a knee jerk and say, well, but they're for entertainment and they're for the blah, blah, blah. I don't think stories are for entertainment. I think stories, and they're not always entertaining, they're engaging. And I think the reason that stories are engaging is because nature wants us to engage in that activity, because that activity is for our survival.
Right.
Right. And you can see it. There's all kinds of clues.
But like even joy, like the joy you get from watching a comedy helps give you the stamina to be serious as long as you need to be serious. And that's survival.
But also, there are very few comedic heroes. Bugs Bunny's one, Charlie Chaplin is one. They kind of use their wits to survive. Right?
For sure.
You can use your brain to survive. Right? That's survival information.
Yep.
But sometimes it's what not to do. So somebody who is profoundly greedy in a comedy like Daffy Duck. He's an example of who not to be.
Right.
Right? Because there's all kinds of survival, right? Most of the time I say survival, people think physical. But there's physical, there's emotional or spiritual survival, there's cultural survival, there's social survival. Don't be a jerk. Don't be like Daffy Duck. The guy, he's laughable. Yep. His greed is laughable. Do not do this. Right? So, of course it makes you laugh because it's ridiculous. And so you go, I don't want to be ridiculous. Right? So there's all kinds of, and I was going to say, like, there's all kinds of clues to this, but one of them is how stories often go from older to younger or more experienced to less experienced. And when you tell kids it's story time, they lose it. Story time, right? And I think the reason sit on the carpet. Yes, and I think the reason is they are essentially feeding, that it serves very much the same function. And they are essentially feeding because they're new to the world and they need to know how it works. How does this place work? I just got here. Right? There's all kinds of, I can go on and on. There's a long list that I think supports this idea. But so if that's the case, and this has to do with having a point, which I mentioned earlier. What's your point? What's the survival strategy that you're imparting to people? What's the survival information you're giving to people? If we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs as storytellers. And essentially, that's the main focus of the company, that we have a responsibility to help people survive as best we can. And again, it can be any of those things. It could be social, emotional, spiritual, right? Sometimes physical, all those things. But if that's not at the core, it's a waste of everybody's time and effort and resources. So don't do that. Have something to say. And if all you want is to make money, you will say very little.
Yes. Because you're scared of alienating someone because you want to make the most money.
Right. Right. And then you're going, what do people like? What do people like? You don't give people what they like. None of the best stories give people what they like. They give people what they need. Right. Because there's a friend of mine told me there was a saying in Korea. If you don't love your kids, feed them cake. Right? That giving people what they want is not always the best thing for them.
It's totally true.
Yeah.
And
right?
even what they don't know that they need is something that we should give them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Of course you want it to be, I'll put it in quotes, entertaining. Of course you want all those things. But at the end of the day, they may not know that they needed that lesson. They may not know. And that lesson may not be valuable to them in that moment. It may be valuable in a year or 2 years. Or that's what that was about.
Yep.
Right? So I will say that it always gets in there, though. If it's survival, if you have really strong survival information embedded in there, it does get in there. And you do somehow know it's important. It does work its way in. And I just think that's what they came with human equipment. They came with us. We didn't invent them. There's no culture on earth who hasn't had them. Right. And we have stories that have enough survival information in them that we have had them for almost as long as there's been people, right? So we have stories from Aesop, right? We have stories. So we have the story, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Well, that's the reason that story survives is because it helps us survive. That's why it survives. Otherwise, it would have gone away. Oh, whatever, boy and a wolf, whatever, right? It has something for us. And I always say all good stories are true. The Boy Who Cried Wolf did not happen.
Right.
But it happens every day.
That's right.
Right? All stories are true stories if they're any good. That's just the nature of stories. Anyway.
That's amazing. All right, man, we're gonna end it here. This is not gonna be the last time we connect on this. I think about this stuff all the time. I'm just thrilled to have had you on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll connect with you again soon, man.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right, take care.
Thanks for listening to State of the Union. If you found something in this episode that stuck with you, share it. And make sure you signed up for our newsletter. That's where we share new episodes, real updates, and ways to grow this community. You can also become a Beta Union member for early access to this podcast, exclusive content, and discounts on workshops and events. That support helps keep this show going and helps fuel independent creative community. The link's in the show notes. Got a win, a shift, or a challenge you're facing in your creative life? Send it to stories@creativeworks.co. We might feature it in a future episode. State of the Union is produced by Creative Workers Union and edited by Sydney Gladue. New episodes drop every Monday. Until then, keep showing up, focus on your craft, and remember, you're not alone.